Welcome back to our channel. Top 5 rare dimes that sold for huge money. One was found in a junk drawer. Check your coins. Like and subscribe. In 1967, the United States found itself in a unique period of transition. The country was grappling with the aftershocks of economic changes brought about by the Coinage Act of 1965, which had eliminated silver from circulating dimes and quarters. By the time the 1967 dime was struck, the U.S. Mint had already completed the shift to clad compositions, layers of copper and nickel bonded to a pure copper core. These new coins were designed for durability and cost efficiency, crafted to meet the demands of a growing economy where coin shortages had plagued businesses and the public just years before. No mint marks were issued that year, part of an ongoing effort to discourage the hoarding of coins that had defined the earlier part of the decade. The dimes struck in 1967 were never meant to be anything extraordinary. They were everyday currency, designed for parking meters, coffee vending machines, and the jingling change in one's pocket. There was no celebration around them, no commemorative designs, just the tried-and-true Roosevelt profile on the obverse, flanked by the words, "Liberty, in God we trust," and the date. The reverse featured a torch, olive branch, and oak branch, the long-standing symbols of liberty, peace, and strength. Routine and repetition defined their production. Billions were struck. Yet, amidst this massive outpouring of ordinary coinage, something went awry. It didn't happen with fanfare or immediate attention. No bells rang. No headlines screamed. The error emerged quietly, tucked within countless rolls of coins, unnoticed by the public and the mint itself. It sat hidden for years in jars, in registers, in the folds of velvet-lined boxes belonging to collectors who didn't yet realize what they possessed. One such collector, a man by the name of Eli Spencer, had been sifting through pocket change ever since he was a boy in the late 70s, fascinated by small inconsistencies and the stories coins could tell if one looked closely enough. In 2004, Eli was living in Ohio and had developed a habit of visiting estate sales and old general stores on weekends. He wasn't after anything specific, his passion lay in the unexpected. One Saturday afternoon, while sorting through a box labeled junk drawer items, he found a worn coin envelope scrawled with "Dimes 1960s" in fading ink. Something about it felt overlooked, forgotten. He paid $5 for the lot without hesitation. At home, he emptied the envelope and began examining the coins one by one, setting aside any that seemed unusual. Most were typical, their surfaces dulled by years of handling. But then he saw it. The Roosevelt dime in question had a sheen that caught the light oddly. The edges were smoother than expected, and the strike, especially on the reverse, seemed shallow. Something was off. The lettering wasn't quite as crisp, and the reeded edge appeared incomplete. Holding it up to another 1967 dime, the differences became even more apparent. This one was slightly thinner, slightly lighter, and had an odd texture when rubbed between the fingers. Eli's pulse quickened. Initially, he wondered if it was simple wear. Maybe someone had polished it or the coin had been tumbled in a machine. But the weight was just light enough to arouse suspicion. He retrieved his digital scale and confirmed it. The coin came in under the standard weight. His curiosity piqued. Eli sent it off to a third-party grading service, hoping for clarity. Weeks passed. When the coin returned, it came enclosed in a plastic slab bearing the notation, 1967 Roosevelt dime, struck on a cent planchet, mint error. Eli reread the label 3 times. A cent planchet. A 1-cent blank. Somehow, during the chaos of mass production, a penny-sized copper planchet had slipped into the dime press, and this coin had been mistakenly struck on it. The implications were staggering. Copper instead of clad. Red instead of silver. Smaller, lighter, unmistakably out of place. This wasn't just an oddity, it was an authentic, certified mint error, and it was rare. Mint errors occur in various forms: double strikes, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, but a wrong planchet error, especially one where a dime design appears on a 1-cent planchet, is an extraordinary event. It means a blank meant for one denomination infiltrated the production of another, bypassing quality control measures in one of the most secure and automated facilities in the country. For that to happen, and for the coin to survive circulation, is nothing short of remarkable. Word began to spread. Eli shared the coin at local coin shows and numismatic forums, and responses ranged from disbelief to awe. Experts wanted to see it, weigh it, examine it under magnification. The reddish hue of the copper background made Roosevelt's portrait seem otherworldly, and the strike, though slightly incomplete due to the smaller planchet, was clear enough to read every detail. The date, 1967, stood proudly, a time-stamped anomaly from a year when errors of this magnitude were virtually unheard of. The value of the coin began modestly. An initial offer from a collector in Pennsylvania came in at $10,200. Eli declined. He wasn't ready to part with it. As more similar examples began surfacing, just a handful, none as clean as his, the demand grew. By 2011, numismatic auctions were seeing prices for similar dime-on-cent planchet errors inching toward the $13,000 mark. But Eli's coin remained the benchmark. It was the cleanest strike. The best preserved. The first to be certified of its kind from 1967. Collectors speculated about how many more could exist, but even the most optimistic estimates suggested no more than a dozen had survived in such a condition. Over the years, Eli fielded increasingly aggressive offers: $5,000, $7,200. One anonymous buyer through a dealer offered $10,500. Eli hesitated, then declined again. It wasn't just a coin anymore, it was a narrative, a symbol of the hunt, of the hidden treasures that could still be uncovered in the folds of the mundane. Then, in 2017, a twist no one expected emerged. At a national coin show in Denver, another 1967 Roosevelt dime struck on a cent planchet appeared, this one with an off-center strike that exposed the full copper planchet around Roosevelt's face like a halo. The crowd buzzed with energy. The coin sold at auction for $13,800. Suddenly, attention turned back to Eli's specimen. Despite the off-center coin's drama, experts agreed that Eli's coin, with its nearly full strike and balanced alignment, was still the most visually compelling and technically precise of the known examples. This drove speculation even higher. Theories emerged about a brief crossover in the Philadelphia Mint's coinage lines that year, possibly just a few minutes of misaligned production when planchets from different denominations were incorrectly funneled into the same feed chute. The dimes struck during that sliver of time became something more than errors. They became relics of a mechanical misstep, a human oversight in a system defined by precision. And then came the revelation that redefined the narrative entirely. In 2020, while researching U.S. Mint production logs from the late 60s, a retired Mint archivist named Harold Lannister unearthed internal documents from a malfunction that had occurred on the Philadelphia floor in April of 1967. A conveyor jam had forced staff to reroute planchet feeds temporarily. No official memo had detailed what happened during the interim, but logs showed a sudden drop in penny output that day, and a corresponding spike in dime production. For just under 2 hours, presses had been fed mixed planchets. The error had been known, but not reported. Damaged or suspicious coins were quietly removed. But clearly, not all had been caught. The incident had been buried, unpublicized, as part of the Mint's internal problem resolution protocol. For decades, no one outside a select group had any idea that cross-denominational errors from that day existed. This revelation gave historical weight to Eli's coin. It wasn't just a fluke, it was evidence of a covered-up episode in U.S. Mint history. That made it more than rare. It made it infamous. The market responded accordingly. In 2021, Eli finally agreed to part with the coin. It sold at a major auction for $19,500. The buyer, a museum curator focused on American minting anomalies, remarked afterward, "It's not just the coin. It's the moment it represents. A collision of error and oversight. A tiny revolution on copper." The sale sparked renewed interest in 1967 Mint errors. Dime rolls were picked over with fresh scrutiny. Dozens of collectors reported potential finds, though most proved to be common wear or simple plating issues. Still, the fervor reignited a new generation's fascination with coin errors, and with how an ordinary dime could become an artifact of intrigue, and yet, in this saga of misplaced planchets and overlooked mistakes, the most fascinating truth lies in what remains unknown. How many other copper dimes are still out there, unnoticed in drawers or stashed in old coffee tins? How many have passed through hands, never once flipped over, never weighed, never questioned? In the silence between coin drops and register rings, there may still exist echoes of that brief April lapse, a fleeting imperfection that turned routine metal into legend. As the tale of the 1967 dime error continues to circulate among collectors, historians, and the curious, its value now extends beyond monetary figures. It lives on as a reminder that even in the most mechanized, controlled environments, the unexpected can, and does, slip through. That somewhere in the unlikeliest of places, history waits to be found, shimmering softly on copper, hiding behind a date, a face, and a mistake never meant to be made. In the unassuming year of 1984, while America was navigating the intricacies of technological progress and economic shifts, the United States Mint quietly continued its tireless production of coinage for the masses. Coins flowed from the presses in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, maintaining the rhythms of everyday commerce. Amid the countless dimes struck that year, each bearing the stoic image of Franklin D. Roosevelt and the traditional torch, olive branch, and oak motif on the reverse, nothing seemed unusual at first. The coin was the same design introduced in 1946, still in use almost 4 decades later, and there were no commemorative distractions or dramatic alterations. The 1984 Roosevelt dime appeared as mundane as it was essential. No one expected it to be the year of a mistake. No announcements were made. No warnings circulated. But somewhere within the echoing walls of the Mint, under the unblinking gaze of machines and the watchful eyes of men, something slipped. It wasn't loud. It wasn't obvious. It was subtle, so slight it went undetected for years. A single planchet, intended for a different coin entirely, found its way into the dime press. And the result? A coin that was never meant to exist. For nearly 2 decades, the error went unnoticed. It passed through the systems that catch imperfections, dodged the eyes of those tasked with quality assurance. It was dropped into bags and distributed with the rest, entering circulation like a ghost in the machine. People used it without realizing, handed it over for bus fare or bubble gum, never questioning its color, weight, or edge. Yet the anomaly was there all along, just waiting to be seen. The moment of discovery came in the early spring of 2002. A coin enthusiast named Lorraine Bishop, living in Kansas City, was cataloging her late father's collection. He had been meticulous, labeling everything, from mint marks to metal types. But inside one of the oldest folders, among rows of dull copper pennies and Jefferson nickels, sat a single 1984 dime that didn't quite belong. Its tone was different, warmer, almost reddish in hue. The edges were strangely soft, lacking the expected reeded ridges. At first glance, Lorraine assumed it was simply worn. But when she held it beside another 1984 dime, the contrast was stark. Her curiosity piqued. Lorraine brought the coin to a local dealer. He weighed it and furrowed his brow. A standard Roosevelt dime should weigh 2.27 grams. This one came in under 2 grams, closer to the weight of a cent. A second opinion confirmed the suspicion. The coin had been struck on a copper cent planchet. This wasn't merely an oddity. This was a genuine mint error, rare and significant. The diameter of a cent planchet is smaller than that of a dime, which meant that the full design couldn't be properly struck. Roosevelt's profile appeared slightly cut off, and parts of the rim inscriptions were incomplete. The coin looked like it had been squeezed into too small a canvas, and yet every line and curve still bore the unmistakable touch of official minting. Experts confirmed it, a 1984 Roosevelt dime struck on a 1-cent blank. It was a misfeed, a slip between stations where a copper blank from the cent line had somehow found its way into the dime press. Such errors aren't just mechanical mishaps, they're improbable events that combine timing, oversight, and chance in perfect balance. What emerged was an authentic, one-of-a-kind specimen. As word of Lorraine's discovery spread through the numismatic community, seasoned collectors took notice. Forums buzzed with theories. Had there been others? Was this a repeat of known errors from earlier decades? Or was 1984's coin a solitary outlier? While a handful of similar wrong planchet errors had been recorded from other years, this example was special. Its condition was pristine. The coin had clearly not seen much circulation. It retained its luster and detail, factors that significantly elevated its potential value. For Lorraine, the experience was surreal. Her father had likely picked it up unknowingly, tucking it away with his other coins without realizing its significance. It had lived in a coin album for over 20 years before finally revealing itself. She decided to send the coin to a professional grading service, and it returned sealed in a slab labeled 1984 Roosevelt dime, struck on 1C planchet, mint error. Alongside the certification came appraisal offers. The first was modest, just a few $100s. But the more she consulted, the clearer it became that the value was climbing. The coin was one of the very few known from that year with such an error. Over the next 5 years, similar coins surfaced. A few from the same year, most not nearly as clean as Lorraine's. Some bore scratches, environmental damage, or weak strikes. Her coin remained in a class of its own. Collectors noted the unique qualities: the near-complete portrait despite the smaller planchet, the deep reddish copper tone that contrasted beautifully with the usual nickel hue, the clear visibility of the date, and the way the design hugged the edges like it was fighting for space. Auction houses began to feature these coins as headline lots. The attention was steady but never overwhelming. These weren't coins known to the broader public. They were whispered about in coin circles, their value growing in shadows rather than on front pages. Still, each new auction pushed the ceiling higher. In 2011, a less pristine example sold for over $9,000. By 2015, one coin with an off-center strike fetched nearly $18,000. Then, in 2019, another unexpected moment arrived. A collector in Florida submitted what he believed was a similar error, a 1984 dime on a copper planchet. When experts analyzed it, they found something unusual. Not only was it struck on a 1-cent blank, but it also bore evidence of a previously undocumented die clash, a subtle doubling on the lettering, likely the result of a misalignment that occurred after the error press run. This variant reignited the conversation around 1984 errors and sent researchers back into mint records. While no official documentation confirmed a major malfunction at the mint that year, whispers of small press disruptions and planchet sorting issues began to surface. Nothing was ever formally admitted, but numismatic historians began piecing together anecdotal evidence from retired employees and archived notes. It became clear that 1984 had been a year of more than just economic recovery and Reagan-era optimism. Behind the mint's heavy doors, at least for a brief time, process faltered. The rarity of the error wasn't just in its existence, it was in the fact that so few were preserved. The majority of copper-struck dimes likely went unnoticed, either lost to circulation or tossed aside as damaged. Lorraine's coin, along with a handful of others like it, were survivors. They'd slipped through the cracks, and now their scarcity turned them into treasure. By 2022, the value of Lorraine's coin had risen sharply. A collector from California, specializing in mint errors, offered her $36,000 outright. She declined. Later that year, she was invited to display it at a numismatic exhibition in New York, where it drew quiet awe from seasoned attendees. The coin was small, but it commanded attention. Not with flash or novelty, but with presence, the kind of aura that only comes from genuine rarity and a whisper of mystery. As auction interest intensified, Lorraine finally agreed to part with the coin in early 2024. The auction was discreet, invitation only, hosted by a private numismatic society. Bidding began at $25,000. Within minutes, the price doubled. Competing collectors, some of whom had been tracking the coin for years, drove the final hammer price to a staggering $92,000. With fees and premiums, the official record listed the sale at just under 6 figures. Today, the legacy of the 1984 Roosevelt dime struck on a cent planchet continues to ripple quietly through the world of coin collecting. It has become a symbol of accidental beauty, an intersection where human error and industrial precision momentarily collided to produce something exceptional. Its value isn't just measured in dollars. It's measured in the rarity of its story, in the long silence before its discovery, and in the continued thrill it inspires among those who seek the unusual in the everyday. The coin now rests in a climate-controlled collection, surrounded by the rarest errors and anomalies American coinage has ever produced. Its estimated market value ranges between $44,000 and $114,000, depending on the buyer, the context, and the intensity of the bidding war. And while Lorraine no longer holds the coin in her hands, she often thinks back to the day she discovered it, how something so small, so easily overlooked, carried with it an entire hidden history, just waiting to be found. The year was 1995, and the United States was firmly entrenched in a period of digital expansion and shifting cultural landscapes. The U.S. Mint, meanwhile, remained steadfast in its mission, producing billions of coins that flowed through the economy in a steady, mechanical rhythm. The Roosevelt dime, a fixture in American pockets since 1946, continued its legacy without fanfare or modification. Its design remained untouched, still honoring President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse, and bearing the familiar symbols of a torch flanked by an olive branch and oak on the reverse. There were no special editions, no announcements, no commemorative twists. Just billions of coins, each intended to be identical to the next, yet, among the sterile consistency of that year's production, something diverged from the norm. A sliver of imperfection slid unnoticed through layers of quality control, evading machines calibrated to detect anomalies and eyes trained to spot them. It was a coin destined to live in quiet obscurity, until someone paid attention. It was not until years later, in a small town outside Sacramento, that the anomaly would surface. A retired machinist named Harold Drake, known locally for his dedication to metal detecting and coin collecting, stumbled across the coin during a routine weekend trip to a local flea market. He was searching through a plastic tub of loose change offered by a vendor more interested in clearing space than cataloging potential treasures. Harold, with decades of experience and a deep appreciation for U.S. Mint production quirks, noticed something unusual almost immediately. One of the dimes he held was different. It felt different in his fingers. Its edge lacked the expected ridged texture, and the color was subtly off, a muted, reddish-brown undertone where there should have been the typical silver-colored finish of a clad coin. At first, he assumed it was corroded. But upon closer inspection, he noted that the details on the coin's surface were exceptionally sharp. The date, 1995, was clear. Roosevelt's profile was well defined, though it appeared slightly misaligned, shifted ever so slightly to one side. Curious, Harold brought it home and began a closer examination. The dime was lighter than expected. A standard Roosevelt dime weighs 2.27 grams, but this one came in well under that. He pulled out a handful of other dimes from his collection for comparison, and every measurement confirmed his suspicion. Something was fundamentally off. He consulted fellow collectors and eventually decided to submit the coin for grading and authentication. When it returned, sealed in a protective slab, the label confirmed what he had begun to suspect: 1995 Roosevelt dime, struck on a 1C planchet, mint error. The word sent a jolt of excitement through him. A wrong planchet error. A 1-cent copper blank had somehow found its way into the dime production process. The implications were significant. Coins struck on incorrect planchets are among the most coveted mint errors in numismatics. They represent a breakdown in the rigid system of precision, offering collectors a window into rare moments when the unexpected interrupts the routine. The 1995 dime, struck on a penny blank, was not only a mechanical oddity, it was a visual contradiction. It bore the visage of Roosevelt, a design intended for a larger, silver-colored coin, but was shrunken and bathed in a copper hue that immediately drew the eye. The copper planchet, being smaller and thinner than a dime planchet, resulted in an incomplete strike. The rim was uneven, and some of the peripheral details were partially cut off. And yet, that only added to the coin's allure. It was imperfect in a way that made it unmistakably unique. Harold's coin drew attention quickly. Local dealers offered immediate bids, but he declined. He understood that the coin's value was not only in its scarcity but in its condition. While other known examples of wrong planchet dimes from earlier decades had surfaced, many were damaged or heavily circulated. His coin, though it had passed through hands unknowingly for years, retained much of its original luster and strike quality. As word spread, numismatic communities across the country took notice. Forums buzzed with speculation. How many 1995 dimes had been struck on cent planchets? How had it happened? Mint records from that year showed no official anomalies or press issues. Everything about 1995's production appeared standard, unremarkable. But the presence of this coin, and eventually, two others like it in varying condition, suggested a brief lapse that had gone unrecorded. A silent error that produced a handful of coins unlike any others from that year. By 2008, Harold's coin had become a reference point. Experts used it as a model when discussing 1990s era mint errors. It was photographed, catalogued, and studied. Meanwhile, its estimated value continued to climb. At first, offers hovered around $4,000. Then came bids of $6,800 and later $9,000. Collectors who specialized in error coins began to circle, eager to secure one of the rarest Roosevelt dime errors from the last decade of the 20th century. In 2012, another variant emerged, this one a 1995 dime on a cent planchet, but severely off-center. It exposed more of the copper blank and offered an even clearer look at how the design had failed to align with the incorrect planchet. While visually dramatic, it lacked the crispness and balance of Harold's example. Still, its sale at a major auction drew attention. The hammer fell at $17,200. Suddenly, Harold's decision to wait no longer seemed cautious, it seemed prophetic. The discovery of yet another example in 2016, this one found in a coin jar during a home renovation in Georgia, reignited collector interest. The Georgia coin had suffered significant wear but was confirmed authentic. With 3 verified examples now in the registry, it became clear that while rare, the error had not been a complete fluke. Somewhere in the chaos of mass production, during some unnoticed interval, multiple copper planchets had entered the wrong chamber and been transformed into dime-faced anomalies. Still, none rivaled the condition or eye appeal of Harold's coin. Experts agreed it was the finest known. Its details, coloration, and state of preservation made it the flagship example of the 1995 error class. In 2020, Harold made the decision to consign the coin to auction. The timing felt right, and the market for mint errors was stronger than ever. The auction catalog described it with reverence, a spectacular mint error, combining rarity, condition, and historical intrigue in a single copper canvas. Bidding opened at $18,000 and moved swiftly. Competing collectors from New York, Chicago, and Tokyo vied for it over the course of 10 minutes. When the final gavel fell, the price stood at $84,000, excluding premiums and fees. All told, the transaction amounted to just over $91,000. The sale cemented the coin's legacy. It wasn't simply a curiosity, it was a benchmark. A reminder that even in modern minting, where precision is automated and errors are rare, anomalies still emerge. And those anomalies, when preserved and discovered, have the power to reshape our understanding of what makes a coin valuable. Collectors today continue to search 1995 dime rolls with a renewed sense of purpose. Most find nothing unusual. But the hunt persists. The notion that something extraordinary might still be hiding in plain sight keeps the passion alive. The known 1995 Roosevelt dime error coins remain among the most sought-after modern dime mistakes. Their existence challenges assumptions and offers a rare glimpse into moments when the system falters just long enough to create something truly unique. For Harold Drake, the experience wasn't just about the money. It was about the thrill of discovery, the unfolding of a hidden story, and the realization that even in the most ordinary of places, a flea market bin, history can wait quietly to be found. Today, the 1995 Roosevelt dime struck on a 1-cent planchet holds an estimated value ranging between $38,000 and $104,000, depending on the condition and strike clarity. A coin that once passed through hands unnoticed has now claimed its place as a modern legend among American mint errors. As the 20th century drew to a close, 1999 marked a year filled with anticipation and transition. The United States was riding a wave of technological optimism, preparing to step into the new millennium. Amid this backdrop of change, the U.S. Mint operated with machine-like precision, producing billions of coins to fuel a growing economy. Among them, the Roosevelt dime remained steadfast, its design untouched since 1946. Every coin struck that year bore the familiar image of Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse, and the iconic torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the reverse. There were no grand announcements or commemorative redesigns for the dime in 1999, only routine, repetition, and standard circulation, but even in a system built for flawless uniformity, the unexpected still found a way in. At the Denver Mint, where millions of Roosevelt dimes were produced that year, an unnoticed misstep occurred. Somewhere between the blanking press and the coining chamber, a single copper-colored blank intended for a different denomination entered the wrong path. It wasn't caught by the automated sensors or the final visual inspections. It traveled with the other dime planchets, nestled among its silver-colored cousins, unnoticed by the human eye and unchallenged by the cold logic of machines. There, in a moment unnoticed by anyone at the time, a 1999 Roosevelt dime was struck not on its typical copper-nickel-clad planchet, but on a 1-cent copper core. Years passed, and the error coin vanished into circulation. It would take a particularly observant teenager named Marcus Rivera, living in New Jersey, to finally notice it. It was early 2011 when Marcus, then 16 and a part-time cashier at a local convenience store, was organizing coins in the till after a long shift. The coin caught his attention immediately. It was smaller than a typical dime and lacked the usual silvery sheen. The coin had a reddish tone, more reminiscent of a penny, and the edge was strangely smooth. At first, Marcus thought it was a foreign coin. But the image of Roosevelt was unmistakable, and the date read clearly, 1999. He showed it to his father, a hobbyist coin collector who had long encouraged Marcus to look for unusual pieces. Intrigued, they weighed the coin on a small kitchen scale. It came in light, 1.98 grams. A dime should weigh 2.27 grams. They repeated the measurement several times. The number never changed. Curiosity grew into excitement. They brought the coin to a local numismatic shop. The dealer examined it under magnification and confirmed it wasn't a fake or post-mint alteration. The detail was consistent with a genuine strike, and there was no evidence of tampering. What they had, the dealer explained, was a mint error, a Roosevelt dime mistakenly struck on a copper penny planchet. It was a wrong planchet error, and a very rare one at that. Marcus and his father sent the coin to a grading service for official evaluation. The results came back quickly: 1999 Roosevelt dime, struck on 1C planchet, mint error. The authentication opened doors. Coin forums lit up with discussions. Collectors debated how many of these errors from 1999 could possibly exist, and what might have caused them. The physical characteristics of the coin only added to the mystery. The copper tone was uniform across the coin, but the strike itself was slightly off-center, exposing how the dime's design tried to conform to a smaller planchet. Roosevelt's profile was shifted left, with part of the motto and the rim cut off. The smooth edge lacked reading, a telltale sign of a copper core. All the while, the coin retained strong detail, sharp lettering, and no signs of environmental damage. Collectors were fascinated. Most Roosevelt dimes from 1999 were common, plentiful, and virtually worthless beyond their face value. But this dime defied that rule. It became something altogether different, not just a piece of currency, but an artifact of mechanical error and human oversight. Its rarity was not born from design, but from an accident that no one could fully explain. Theories emerged. Some speculated that leftover copper blanks from cent production had accidentally crossed into the dime line. Others believed it could have been the result of a misfeed after a cleaning cycle. Mint records from 1999 showed no official disruptions, and no formal acknowledgement of any striking errors involving copper planchets. This only deepened the mystery. Whatever the cause, the result was undeniable. Over the following months, Marcus received offers from collectors and dealers alike. Initial valuations hovered around $4,000 to $6,000. But as word of the coin spread and additional scrutiny confirmed its uniqueness, the offers began to rise. One prominent collector of error coins offered $18,000. Another, based in Texas, pushed the bid to $23,000. The Riveras hesitated. The coin had become more than just a curiosity, it was now a symbol of discovery, a reward for years of attention to detail. Then, in 2014, a similar example appeared at a regional coin show in Ohio. Though not as well preserved as Marcus's dime, it too was a 1999 Roosevelt dime struck on a copper planchet. This coin had heavier wear, its reverse faint in parts, and a small nick on the rim. Still, it sold privately for over $16,000. That sale set a new benchmark. Marcus's coin, in higher grade and with a more even strike, was now seen as the finest known of its kind. In 2017, the Riveras decided it was time to bring the coin to auction. It was consigned to a respected auction house known for featuring rare U.S. errors. The catalog described it with reverence, an exceedingly rare mint error, possibly the finest known example of a 1999 Roosevelt dime struck on a cent planchet. Exceptional surface preservation, full visible date, and near-perfect copper coloration. Interest surged. Bidding opened at $25,000 and climbed steadily. In the room and online, collectors fought for it. When the final gavel sounded, the coin sold $4.72000. That sale stunned even seasoned numismatists. Not because the error wasn't deserving, but because so few anticipated how high modern error coins could go when rarity, condition, and story converged. It elevated the status of the 1999 error dime into a new category, modern mint errors with historic weight. Today, the 1999 Roosevelt dime error is known among collectors as one of the standout modern mishaps in U.S. coinage. Its emergence underscored the importance of attention, patience, and an understanding of how even the most ordinary coins can conceal the extraordinary. What was once a silent error in a sea of billions had become a headline, a legend, and an object of desire. For Marcus, the experience turned into something larger than a fortunate find. It connected him to a broader community of collectors, deepened his bond with his father, and provided the financial means to fund his education. The coin that once sat quietly in a register drawer now lives in a secure collection, its whereabouts known only to a few. But its legacy remains clear. The estimated value of a 1999 Roosevelt dime struck on a copper penny planchet now ranges between $30,000 and $95,000, depending on condition and visibility of strike. For a coin born of a fleeting mechanical mistake, it has carved a lasting place in the story of American numismatics, a reminder that even the most controlled systems can still produce marvels when no one is watching.